Joining us right now is the former advisor to Newt Gingrich presidential campaign, Lee Speakerman. Lee, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for joining us. What do you think about this proposal from the president taking on himself?
Well, I think it's crucial that we do everything we can to improve this health care situation. And unfortunately, because we haven't had a decent bill before Congress and what was put before Congress wasn't passed, the president's going to have to resort to executive actions to begin to remedy this situation. But we've got to do a lot better than this. We need a true bipartisan, substantial health care reform bill. Anything this big should be done with both parties, just as LBJ almost exactly 52 years ago pushed through Medicare. He had a much bigger majority of Democrats in Congress than we currently have with Republicans. He still insisted on getting Republican votes because he knew something that big had to be bipartisan. He wanted both parties to have skin in the game. And what do you know? No one's made any serious attempt to unwind Medicare in all of the years since then. So that's the approach we need to take. In the meantime, yes, we've got to have some of these more egregious problems with Obamacare remedied with executive actions.
Yeah, Lee, I want to bring you this breaking news that the president is tweeting this morning. I want to get your take on it because this is what the president just said a moment ago. It would be really nice if the fake news media would report the virtually unprecedented stock market growth since the election need tax cuts. He goes on to say the Democrats want massive tax increases and soft crime-producing borders. The Republicans want the biggest tax cut in history and the wall. He makes his case for this policy on Twitter. Is that working?
Well, I mean, the Twitter communications platform is one of the, along with Franklin Roosevelt's fireside chats and Ronald Reagan's speeches to the nation, powerful presidential communications approaches in history. So I think it's great that he tweets. I don't agree with everything President Trump tweets by any means, but I like the fact that he uses that platform to have a direct line to the American people. In terms of tax reform, of course, that's how he's going to have to sell it. And he's right. When you have a tax reform plan, as has been put before the Congress, that is going to reduce the individual tax form by 80%, the number of lines by 80%, and it's going to shift taxes away from business. So, business is our growth engine, especially small business, and businesses are our problem solvers in this country. They are developing the technologies that will address many of our health care issues, that will use artificial intelligence to improve productivity, make our lives better. We've got to do things to stimulate small business, and tax reform, meaningful tax reform, is a big part of that. I would make changes. I don't like everything about the tax reform that's there, but fortunately, as President Trump has said, he expects Congress to improve the proposal, and I hope that they will do that. For one thing, we ought to add a trade tariff on imported goods. We import $2.2 trillion a year worth of goods in this country. If you take out North American oil, that is oil from Canada and Mexico, it's about $2.1 trillion. A 10% tax would give us $210 billion a year to fund a good health care program and to offset the income tax cuts. And that would be a terrific move toward a consumption-based tax that favors American workers, which is what a trade tariff is, and away from business and away from individual
Before
income.
you jump in, I just want to point out to President Trump, maybe you need to keep Fox Business on a little bit more because we talk about the record stock market and what matters to individuals across this country.
Every morning.
Not just people on the left coast and the East Coast. We talk about it every day.
It's that priority every day, by the way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, and that also goes back to the argument that the president's making here where he says we need tax cuts. But do we need tax cuts if we're at record highs on the stock market and the unemployment rate's at 4%? And I think that feeds into a lot of the Democrats' arguments. But, Lee, my question to you is on this health care. Can the president go alone? Because I think he can. Because I looked at this, and these are associated health plans, and we talked about small business. And what you can do is you can group together with other people and buy plans and policies and gives the consumers choice and businesses choice. And so I think he could basically do this plan and forget about health care. What do you think about that? If he just focuses on this one aspect, use executive action, and then go on to taxes and just solely focus on that?
Well, first of all, I think that tax reform and health care reform should be integrated. That should be done together or looked at together. And the key is groups, as you say. I mean, the problem is, look at the employer market where 80% of their people get their health care through their employer. Those are groups. Those have people with pre-existing conditions. You don't see the government having to shore those plans up because the groups are large enough. We have got to force these health insurance companies to create groups that encompass the uninsured and encompass the current Medicaid population. That can be done, and it can be done across state lines. However, to effect that kind of significant health care reform, you do need legislation, and that's something that I think should be bipartisan. It should include funding, get rid of all the ACA taxes and replace that with a trade
tariff. And people
recognize
that we need tax reform to move the needle on economic growth, Amy.
We do, but we tried to put health care and tax reform together, and it failed miserably. I would just say to the criticism of the president shouldn't be doing this by executive order. When President Obama said we can't wait, that was a political statement. Now we have health insurance plans that are leaving, that people are either have one option or zero if they're buying on the individual market. So in a real sense, we can't wait for Obamacare to circle the drain.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
Yeah, I do think President Trump should take action, but I think, again, to do this right, we have got to revisit this on a legislative level. We really didn't try, Amy, we really didn't try tax reform and health reform as an integrated package. They were still separate, and we were trying to do health reform first. I think we've got to do the two together as an integrated package. We've got to replace the ACA taxes, the Obamacare taxes, with a trade tariff. I think that's a much better approach, and a mandatory FICA withholding on all middle income and above individuals, so everybody is required to pay into their health care, and it goes into their own HSA as opposed to going to a government trust fund. That's the kind of fundamental reform that we need. And again, the health insurance companies, which are prodigiously profitable, talk about stock market. Right. I've said this on this show before. Health insurance companies over the past 5 years, the biggest health insurers, on average, have tripled in value, grown faster than Apple. I mean, that doesn't make any sense for pushing paper. So there's arbitrage there. They're making a lot of money, and everybody's worried, oh my God, they're going to leave the exchanges. Hey, wait a minute. What do you mean? They are basically trying to hold America hostage, and we need to say, hey, as long as you've got no federal premium price controls, as long as you don't have antitrust restrictions, which they don't. There's almost no antitrust. That's why you have all these healthcare monopolies. By God, you're going to help us insure the uninsured.
Thank you so much, Lee. Great conversation.
You're
Lee Speakerman joining us, and we'll be right